Hi everyone, my name is Sapna. I'm the Talent Development and Special Projects Manager here at CAAM, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. You just watched HAMTRAMCK USA by co-directors and co-producers Razi, Jafri, and Justin Feltman. The film is eligible for our Audience Award, and to vote, please click the link above the player. Thank you so much for doing that, and the winners will be announced right after the festival. HAMTRAMCK USA followed the political campaigns for mayor and city council for the town of Hamtramck in Michigan, which is the only majority Muslim city in the US. CAAM is so proud to have been a funder for the film, and we're thrilled to have co-directors and co-producers Razi Jafri and producer Justin Feltman here today. Welcome, Razi and Justin.
Hi, Sapna. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to open this session, Razi and Justin, if I could ask you about how you came across, I know, Razi, you live in Michigan, how you came across the town of Hamtramck, and how you came to, make this film. Did you know about the city beforehand? Did you know Justin beforehand? How did you start the collaboration? Maybe we can start with you, Razi.
Yeah, I mean, having grown up in Metro Detroit, Hamtramck was a place where, a lot of Muslim families and Muslim immigrants settled, and it was also a place to, get halal meat and groceries and go shopping for different, things that one needed, and so its reputation and its sort of environment and its culture have changed a lot over the years. More recently, it's seen an influx of immigration from other places. There was a huge resettlement of Bosnian refugees in the 90s, and then new Yemeni communities that have moved into the city as well. And then also there's been a lot of artists and younger people that have been moving into the city as well. So it's sort of built up its cultural capital as well over the years.
And when did you decide to make this film about basically the political engagement of, there's a Bangladeshi candidate, there's a Yemeni candidate, and there's also a Polish American candidate. And then also, how did you and Justin first meet and decide to collaborate? Justin?
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
So I was up there in 2016 during the election. I was working on a project exploring underrepresented voices in American democracy. And I met Razi, who had introduced me to a number of Muslim activists across the metropolitan area, not just Hamtramck. And the day after the election, as we're kind of regrouping, we'll say, we had discussed what kind of project we could work on together moving forward. And when we discussed Hamtramck, it just immediately clicked, like, this is a documentary. The year before, in 2015, they had just elected a majority Muslim city council. We figured, this might be the first Muslim mayor in the 100-year lineage of Polish mayors. And so we immediately kind of dove in on this project. The current mayor, Karen Majewski, gave us approval of following her campaign. We picked up Kamal Rahman, allowed us to follow his campaign as well. And, we just immediately kind of were getting the green light and dove into the project. I left all my film gear with Razi then and said, we'll visit you once a month for like a long weekend. And then I moved there for 6 months as the campaign kind of started heating up. And we just kind of filmed and lived and breathed Hamtramck every second, basically.
Yeah, as Sapna, you'd pointed out that Hamtramck was America's first and only Muslim majority city, and then if you remember at the time, in 2016, we were kind of on the heels of a very contentious presidential election that was taking place that summer and fall. And so at the conclusion of the election, it felt like we needed to tell a story about one of the communities or some of the communities that had been targeted, for prejudice and hate speech during the course of the campaign season. So HAMTRAMCK felt like a really great place because while it's unique in a lot of ways, being a Muslim majority city, it's also an immigrant majority city as well, or people from immigrant backgrounds. And so while it's unique in that regard, there's cities all across America that are changing in the way that HAMTRAMCK is. The migration patterns are bringing in new communities. People are moving out to other places. And so it presented a really great case study for how America is changing. And so there's a lot to learn from HAMTRAMCK's experience, both through its successes around multiculturalism and also some of its stumbles along the way as well. So we really wanted to, we felt like it was an important story, particularly at the time when we were working on the film.
Yeah, watching the film, I was really struck by how amicable everyone is towards one another, except for the one poll worker, I think, who was yelling at, I forget whose campaign it was, to move away from the polling station. There were no, there was not much antagonism between communities. So I was wondering, was that something that is really accurate and authentic of HAMTRAMCK, or were there moments that maybe were left on the cutting room floor? And I know that you talked about the multiculturalism. So maybe this is, a city that's majority Muslim and really has learned to get along with all of the different immigrant communities there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly true. A place like HAMTRAMCK, also considering America's, history with race and racism, you can't have a place that's completely void of racial injustice and racist incidents. And so HAMTRAMCK is no different in that regard. However, one has to be politically and socially savvy if you're going to thrive in a place like HAMTRAMCK. And more we've seen an influx of people moving into HAMTRAMCK, particularly over the last 5 to 10 years, of all different backgrounds. And so one of the things that you see in the film is the politicians, particularly, I think, it's interesting to observe Karen's campaign is, she goes to the different mosques, to the Bengali mosque, to the Yemeni mosque, to different communities. One can't be a successful candidate without having some type of connection to these other communities and on some level embracing multiculturalism. And so I think, it's a very practical move. It's very politically savvy. At the same time, it's just kind of what I think we're going to need as a society if we want to move forward in a peaceful direction. So I think, for the most part, it's true. People generally tend to get along. And I think it's a good model to consider when looking at other places across the country. But yeah, I would say HAMTRAMCK is not without its stumbles around racism and discrimination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is, a lot of the moments I'd say where things may have gotten heated, it's around like trash contracts. Typical kind of municipality disagreements that would happen in any city in America and is, more or less unremarkable, and wouldn't really be that interesting to watch that kind of debate unfold. So, I think that we kind of chose to show kind of some of the differences of HAMTRAMCK in that way.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how, because you did have some pretty good access to the candidates. How did you work that out? You said that you went to HAMTRAMCK to observe some of the political civic engagement. Did you go knowing that you would do a film, or was the film kind of a lucky outcome of your engagement there in HAMTRAMCK?
I'd say a little bit of both. I think that we decided pretty early on, it's kind of looking back, I think it was around November, December of 2016 that we wanted to do a film about HAMTRAMCK. And so that idea was sort of, we're pretty committed to it. And, later in the coming months, I think the story that we had in mind really began to evolve. And I think that happened because we started meeting the candidates, and our approach to it was that, we wanted to spend time with them without the camera and just kind of get to know them, allow them to get to know us. We're not exactly household names. That's not likely to change after this film either. And so, and so there's a real trust that I think is really important to establish, because, people are sharing such important parts of their lives with you, their personal lives. We attended funerals and we went to businesses and we went to people's homes, and that is a real trust that, people are giving you. And so, I think, our big thing was that, we really wanted to establish, I wouldn't say necessarily like friendships, but we wanted to try to, establish ourselves as sincere and wanting to tell a true and honest story. And so I think for the first few months, we spent time with people, visiting them in their businesses, really getting their buy-in, on the project. And on some level, it wasn't that difficult, because Hamtramck being such a small town, everybody knows each other. People are not working hours away. They don't have long commutes. They typically work and live in the community. Karen has a vintage clothing and antique store in the city, and we spent a lot of time at her business. And Kamal, we spent time at his home. And so I think that's one of the things that allowed us to get close to people, was that in the beginning, we didn't really show up with cameras. I think we just showed up with questions and curiosities. And then, when the campaigning season started, we did attend a lot of city council meetings. We attended, political rallies. We attended events, and at that point, we did start bringing the cameras. And so, it took us, a little bit of time to get warmed up with people, but at that point, we did start, filming. So.
Yeah, I think, Hamtramck, when they kind of became the first Muslim majority city council in America, they got a lot of news coverage. And I think a lot of it was very sensationalist. And so when we came around, I think at first there was a little bit of media weariness that happened in the city. But as Razi said, when you show that you're invested in them and invested in their story, I think people really saw that and warmed up to us pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I would, for me, like living in Detroit, I live 10 minutes from Hamtramck, and then, to Justin's credit, he moved to Hamtramck, and so, I think that was really quite a big deal, for us to be so close to the city that we were making telling a story about. So.
So how long did it take you to do this film exactly? Like, how long did you, cultivate the relationships, and then actually production-wise, how long that took? I know post-production will take forever sometimes, but how long was that process?
The main story kind of took a year. We kind of followed them from about January to January. So leading up to the election, and then January was their swearing-in / inauguration ceremony. And that's kind of when we left the main storyline, although we still kind of filmed, pickups, shoots and stuff to kind of provide a little bit more context to their lives in the following year. But yeah, the main story was kind of at that time.
About a year. And if you were living there, Justin, did they, did you kind of, were you able to drop in at a, phone calls notice, and then, that sort of probably developed a rapport, right?
Yeah. And vice versa. I mean, sometimes they just text me and say, "Hey, come over. I want to film with you right now."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Being around definitely made it easier to connect on both sides of that conversation. So it was nice because, a lot of people would also be looking out for us and be like, "Hey, there's probably this event you wouldn't have heard from anyone else." And we ended up getting access to, and, no one else would have probably gotten that if it wasn't that we had spent the time to really get to know them.
Right. So it sounds like they were also quite invested in the project themselves. So
Very much
have
so,
they
yeah.
seen the film, and what do they think if they have?
I don't think many have.
No,
No?
unfortunately there haven't been a lot of opportunities to see the film, short of us just sending in an email link, which sort of feels a little bit prosaic at this point because we've spent so much time working on it. So we'd
Right.
like it to be a little bit more ceremonial,
Mhm.
and so we were really excited. Obviously we had the premiere that was canceled at South by Southwest. And then our second screening was supposed to be at the Free Press Film Festival, and we were so excited. It was our homecoming,
Mhm.
screening and premiere. Detroit premiere for the film, and so we were planning on bringing students from Hamtramck to see the film, and we were really excited about it, and almost as I mean, in many ways even more excited than South by Southwest, in some ways more nervous, because the people from Hamtramck and the candidates would actually get to see the film. Our plan was to take some of the candidates from the film to some of the festivals. We were going to
Mhm.
take several people to South by Southwest, and then obviously a lot of them would have been there in Detroit. So yeah, it's been difficult to have them view it, but now that we have a lot of virtual options, that I think people will start seeing the film now.
Right. And I mean, who knows what will happen with the pandemic, but once this is well, once you're able to gather in person, do you plan to have like seems like it seems appropriate maybe at the city fair or something, to have a screening for everyone, because it seems like the entire town was the protagonist, you know? That
Hmm.
would be lovely.
Yeah, we definitely want to get as many opportunities to engage directly with the city with this and kind of hear their thoughts, positive or negative, whichever people are feeling. We're really just excited to kind of hear locally
Mhm.
what resonates.
Have you, kept in touch with, some of the protagonists, and how are they doing post-election and during this pandemic as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very much so. Both Justin and I stay in touch with them. I actually, full disclosure, I've moved to Hamtramck since,
Oh.
so I just crossed the border from Detroit to Hamtramck. So, and for those that, just a sort of a little bit of a fun geography, fun fact, Detroit actually has two cities within its boundary, and we mentioned it in the film, but I just want to, say it again. Hamtramck and Highland Park, which are both inside the city limits of Detroit. So yeah, I mean, I've moved there, so I run into people. I ran into Karen, a couple of weeks ago at the post office. It's kind of funny seeing people with their masks on, so it's like kind of hard to recognize people. But some of the, I mean, so they're fulfilling their terms, and Abraham went on to run for state rep, and he won that seat. It's exciting to see him going on and doing other things. And I think for the most part, they all have, they all intend to remain engaged and involved in local politics. And Kamal has been involved in lots of organizing. He was also involved in the census, as well. Obviously with Karen and Fadl, they're fulfilling their terms. And so, yeah, everybody's doing well. City council is very active. There's obviously a lot to deal with right now in Hamtramck. So, yeah, but we do stay in
That's
touch. Yeah.
great. So, we're gonna we're reaching the end of our Q&A here, but I'd love for you to tell everyone where we can, what the plans are for Hamtramck, where we can, audiences can maybe watch the film.
yeah. Beyond CAAMFest here, we have several other upcoming film festivals. You can visit our website, hamtramckdocumentary.com, and we're Hamtramck Doc on all the social medias, and we'll kind of release the upcoming festivals there. Through the Center for Asian American Media's grants. That kind of helps us with CPP funding, kind of getting onto PBS. Nothing's finalized, but we'll definitely put updates there if that's finalized. And yeah, hopefully later this year or early next year, this will be available for wide distribution.
Great. Any last things you wanted to add that we haven't had a chance to touch on from either one of you?
Well, you know, I would just say, you know, this is such a quintessentially American story. And, you know, we're really drawn to HAMTRAMCK for lots of reasons. You know, it's a very charming, quirky place. You know, and at the same time, you know, it really does, you know, serve as a bellwether, you know, for how America is changing. And there's a lot of great lessons to be learned. And, you know, one of the things that we've seen is that a lot of media and scholars and academics have been studying HAMTRAMCK for, you know, a couple of years now, and there hasn't really been any type of like film or sort of anything in popular media that's been put out there. And so we're hoping that this film can really serve as a tool to start conversations about our demographic shifting, and how we want to live as Americans with one another, you know, in this changing landscape. Our plan with the film is also to work with, you know, schools and libraries through our educational campaign as well, you know, to facilitate conversations around immigration, refugees, asylum, diversity, multiculturalism, Islamophobia, you know, and so all of these topics which are, you know, prescient in the moment right now, the film sort of encapsulates. And so we welcome conversation about all these, you know, and, you know, we would love for, you know, people to use the film as a starting point around those conversations.
That's great. Justin, did you have any?
I mean, Razi, the one thing I was gonna mention was, you know, the educational programming. You know, if anyone is interested in, you know, sharing this film, please reach out to us. We'd love to speak to your school or organization.
Great. Thank you so much, Razi and Justin, for joining us. Thank you for screening with CAAMFest Forward. It was a pleasure to talk to you both.